When we look back at the darkest chapters of human history, we usually imagine executioners using heavy iron blades, burning stakes, or stretching racks. We think of physical trauma that ends a life quickly. But the most terrifying, twisted minds in the ancient world knew a very dark secret. They understood that the human body can pass out from sudden pain, but the human mind can be tortured for weeks. They didn't just want to destroy the physical body, they wanted to completely break the soul. They figured out how to use the slow, unstoppable forces of nature, animals, insects, and even growing plants, to slowly and agonizingly consume a human being alive. Forget everything you have seen in horror movies. Here are 3 of the most horrifying, psychologically destructive biological executions ever invented by mankind. Let us travel back to the ancient Persian Empire, where they invented a nightmare known as Scaphism, or the boats. This wasn't just an execution. It was a carefully calculated process of biological decay. The victim, usually a traitor or a severe criminal, was stripped completely naked. They were then forced to lie down inside a hollowed-out wooden rowboat. The boats were designed perfectly so that only the victim's head, hands, and feet were sticking out. They could not move a single muscle. Then, the true horror began. The executioners would force-feed the victim massive, sickening amounts of milk and honey. They would pour it down their throat until the victim's stomach could not take it anymore, causing severe, uncontrollable diarrhea. The inside of the wooden boats quickly became a pool of human waste. But the executioners were not done. They would take more sweet, sticky honey and smear it all over the victim's exposed face, eyes, ears, and limbs. Finally, the boats were pushed out into a stagnant, dirty, dead swamp under the boiling, relentless desert sun. The smell of the sweet honey mixed with the rotting human waste created a scent that attracted millions of insects from miles away. Swarms of wasps, angry ants, and flesh-eating beetles would descend upon the victim. They would cover the victim's face, crawling into their nose and ears. The insects would slowly start eating the victim alive, laying their eggs deep inside the rotting, infected flesh. Maggots would hatch and eat the victim from the inside out. And the most cruel part? The executioners would return every single day in a small boat, just to force-feed the victim more milk and honey, ensuring they didn't die of dehydration. The victim was kept alive, fully conscious, feeling every single bite. Historical records show that it could take up to 17 days of unimaginable, crawling, rotting agony before the victim's heart finally gave out. If the idea of millions of bugs crawling under your skin isn't your biggest fear, then let's move forward in time to the dark, damp dungeons of medieval Europe. Here, they didn't use insects. They used something much bigger and much more desperate: the rat torture. The setup for this execution was terrifyingly simple. The victim was stripped and tied down flat on a heavy wooden table. Their arms and legs were bound so tightly with thick leather straps that they couldn't even twitch. The executioner would then bring out a heavy iron bucket. Inside this bucket was a large, hungry, and very energetic rat. The executioner would place the open end of the bucket directly flat against the victim's bare stomach, strapping it down tightly so the rat could not escape from the sides. At first, the rat would just panic. It was trapped in the dark, scratching harmlessly at the victim's skin, looking for a way out. But then, the psychological torture shifted to pure, unbearable physical pain. The executioner would take glowing, burning hot coals from a fire and place them directly on the top of the metal bucket. Iron conducts heat extremely fast. Within minutes, the air inside the bucket became boiling hot. The rat, a creature of pure survival instinct, became desperate to escape the unbearable burning heat. It would run in circles, burning its paws on the hot metal. It would look for any way out. Since the thick iron walls of the bucket were impossible to chew through, the rat realized it only had one soft, fleshy escape route: downwards. Driven by absolute panic and the instinct to survive, the rat would start digging. It would use its razor-sharp claws and teeth to tear through the victim's skin. It would bite through the fat, tear through the abdominal muscles, and start tunneling its way straight into the victim's stomach and intestines. The victim, fully awake and unable to move, would feel a live animal literally eating and digging a tunnel through their internal organs. The pain was so absolute and the psychological horror so extreme that victims would often lose their minds completely before the rat finally hit a vital organ and ended their suffering. We have seen insects, and we have seen animals. But what if the executioners didn't use any living creatures at all? What if they used something completely silent, green, and seemingly harmless? In ancient Asia, they perfected a method of execution using a simple plant, bamboo. To understand this torture, you have to understand how bamboo works. Bamboo is one of the fastest-growing plants on planet Earth. Some specific species of bamboo can grow up to 3 feet, or almost 1 meter, in a single day. And when a new bamboo shoot pokes out of the dirt, its tip is as hard and sharp as a wooden spear. The executioners would find a patch of dirt where young, sharp bamboo shoots were just beginning to break through the soil. They would take the victim and tie them horizontally, face up to 4 wooden pegs driven into the ground. The victim was suspended tightly just a few inches above the sharp bamboo tips. And then, the executioners did nothing. They simply walked away and waited. This was a torture of time. Over the next few hours, the victim would feel the sharp tips of the bamboo slowly touching their back. As the sun went down and came back up, the bamboo continued its unstoppable growth. Because bamboo is incredibly strong and rigid, it wouldn't bend when it hit the human body. Instead, it would slowly, millimeter by agonizing millimeter, pierce through the victim's skin. Over the course of 3 to 4 days, the bamboo would grow straight through the victim's back muscles, pierce through their stomach and intestines, and eventually grow completely through their body, coming out of their chest and stomach. The victim was essentially skewered alive in extreme slow motion by a growing forest, a slow, green, unstoppable death that gave the victim days to contemplate their terrifying fate. Humans are the only species on Earth that use their high intelligence to invent new, creative ways to inflict maximum pain on each other. From the rotting boats of Persia, to the desperate rats of Europe, to the silent bamboo of Asia. Which of these 3 biological nightmares do you think is the absolute worst way to leave this world? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe to LoreVerse for more dark, untold history.